Is it fair to say that the greatest fraud check of all time happened on Saturday when Andrew Tate lost to Chase Damore? He should have never taken this fight. If there was any sort of doubt about him winning, he should have never taken this fight. And now he's going online and he's doing the babyface thing of like,
you have to try. And he's younger than me, he's 20 kilo bigger than me, he's more active than me. I didn't fight a pussy, I fought the champs.
you have to live. And I'd rather try and fail. No, that's not who you are. Your persona has nothing to do with failure. Your persona is about winning. Your persona is about achieving wealth and success. Your persona is not about trying and hey, if you don't succeed, you gave it the old college try. That is the antithesis of everything that you have spewed over the past 5 or so years. So miss me with the like, I'm proud of myself for trying. And I went in there against the champion who's really good. No, you didn't. You went in there and you looked awful and you failed. And so just be honest about it.
Something felt off the moment it was over. Not just a loss. Something deeper was breaking. For years, Andrew Tate built this image of being untouchable, always in control, never folding under pressure, the one who's supposed to stand tall while everyone else falls apart. But in one night, that image didn't just crack, it collapsed in front of everyone. And the weirdest part? It wasn't even about the opponent. All attention shifted to him. The look, the energy, the silence. It all felt wrong. And that's when things really started to spiral. After it was over, something didn't sit right at all. The energy shifted, and things only got worse from there. Because what followed wasn't just a bad moment, it turned into a full spiral. Stay locked in, because what was really behind that moment goes way deeper, and honestly, way darker than most expected. This wasn't just another fight he chose to take. It wasn't casual. It felt necessary. Tate didn't step into that ring for fun or competition. This was about control, power, and trying to grab back an image that had been fading for a while. The mission wasn't really boxing. It was perception. It was about showing everyone he was still that same guy. On paper, everything looked lined up perfectly. A trained, experienced striker going up against a reality TV name with limited skills. It looked like an easy night. The odds were clearly in his favor, and most people expected a quick finish, something clean, something loud. That's why this moment carried so much weight. A win could have flipped everything back in his favor. More fights, bigger opponents, headlines everywhere, and a clean path back into the spotlight. But the second that bell rang, something felt off. His movement looked slower than expected, his breathing seemed off, and by round 3, the energy had completely shifted. He wasn't pressing forward anymore. He was just trying to hold on. That's when people started to see it slipping away fast. But somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. Because the real breakdown, that didn't even happen inside the ring. The real moment didn't hit during the fight, but it came right after when Tate started talking. What he said next completely shattered the image he built for years. Losing was never supposed to happen, and when it did, there was no script ready, no recovery plan. Just a man, clearly shaken, trying to make sense of something he never expected to face. At first, he tried to hold it together. He gave respect to his opponent, said all the right things, kept his tone calm, tried to sound in control, but the cracks were already showing. If you really pay attention, you can hear it. The pauses felt too long, the silence dragged, and his words didn't land the way they should have. Something was off, and people noticed it fast. Then came the explanation. I got tired. Not injured, not outmatched, just tired. And that answer didn't sit well with anyone watching. This is the same guy who built his entire reputation on discipline, endurance, and being mentally untouchable.
I want to get spiritual about all of this. You have to understand that there are forces larger than us people. And I said that the answer was already written. Why did I get tired? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is that I was not supposed to win. Why was I not supposed to win? Is the world a better place now that I've lost? Maybe the win means more to Chase than it would have meant to me. Maybe Chase couldn't handle the loss. Maybe God decided, you know what, Chase has been through enough with mocking and things on the internet. Chase doesn't need the loss right now. Andrew can handle the loss better. Maybe God decided. Maybe if I won, we would have went out and celebrated that night, and Tristan would have smoked a bunch of cigars, and maybe he would have died 1 minute earlier. And maybe I get an extra minute with my brother because I lost. And if that's the case, then I'm glad I lost.
The one always talking about stamina and pushing past limits. But by round 3, he looked completely drained, hands dropping, movement gone, breathing heavy like he hit a wall. Even the commentators didn't hold back. They started questioning his preparation, his level, everything. Some openly called it a reality check, and just like that, the whole narrative flipped. This wasn't a top striker having a bad night anymore. It looked like someone getting exposed when the pressure got real. But here's where everything really started falling apart. Instead of owning the moment, instead of saying, "I wasn't ready," he hesitated. And that hesitation hit hard when your whole identity is built on confidence. Because once excuses start coming out, there's no stopping what follows next. And what he said after that? It caught even his loyal supporters off guard. The real collapse didn't happen inside the ring. It played out in his mind. Losing was never part of the plan, and there was no version of him ready for that outcome. On the surface, he stayed respectful, said what people expected, sounded calm. But underneath, things felt unstable. That hesitation showed up again, and the explanations started stacking one after another. First it was ring rust, then age, then timing, then even comments about how the opponent leaned too much. You can see the pattern clearly. Everything got mentioned except the one thing that actually matters: preparation. And that's what made it hit so hard. This is someone who built his entire image around accountability, constantly calling others out. The same voice that used to say, "Losers always blame something else," now suddenly had an excuse for everything except himself. He kept saying the training was flawless, that his body was in top condition, that he did everything right. But if that was true, then why did he fade so early? Why was he already exhausted by round 3? That contradiction didn't go unnoticed. It just sat there, awkward and unanswered, and the internet picked it up instantly. Clips started spreading everywhere, old statements came back into the spotlight, and the contrast was harsh. The same man who once said, "What do you call someone who loses a loser?" was now trying to explain why losing suddenly wasn't a big deal.
You have to have faith in a higher power. There's a lesson in all of this. And I don't need to know exactly what it is. If God decides that for some reason he's going to instantly gas me when I was in perfect physical condition so that I lose, then I have to accept God's decision. And I'll take the punches in the face like a man. And I'm not going to bitch, I'm not going to complain, and I'm not going to cry. I'm going to take it. God decided on that day that that's what has to happen to me, so I did it. If you're going to go through life without understanding that, without understanding that there's a grander plan, a plan that's bigger than just you and your ego. The plan is bigger than just us and our egos, guys. The plan is bigger than just, oh, you know, I want to win, so I have to have what I want like a spoiled child. And what God decides and what's good for the universe and what's good for people to learn from and what's good for the general karmic retributions of the planet. Fuck all that. I want to win so that no one on the internet laughs.
And instead of leaving it there, he pushed it even further. He didn't just explain the loss, he completely reshaped what it meant. That's when this stopped being about boxing altogether. Suddenly, it wasn't about physical limits anymore, it turned into something bigger. Fate, destiny, the universe deciding everything. He started talking like it was all meant to happen, not because of mistakes, but because some higher plan chose it. Think about that for a second. This is the same person who always said discipline controls everything, that hard work separates winners from losers. But now, discipline didn't seem to matter anymore. Losing wasn't failure, it became some kind of sacrifice. And that's when people really started paying attention, because this didn't sound like strength or growth. It sounded like someone trying to hold it together after everything cracked. The top G image never spoke like this before. It never allowed weakness, never respected losing, never backed down. But now there was no anger, no mocking tone, no dominance. He just sounded drained. And that's when the real questions started hitting. If the universe decides who wins, then what happens to the man who always claimed he controls everything? Because once you hand that kind of control away, you don't just grab it back like nothing happened. And right there, another shift kicked in. Money became the focus. He made sure everyone heard it clearly. He's still rich, still successful, still winning in life, and this loss doesn't change anything. But listen closely, because this is where it starts to clash hard. For years, winning was the only thing that mattered. Dominance was the goal. Legacy was everything. Now suddenly, none of that seemed important anymore, and people started noticing the pattern fast. When he wins, it's proof he's superior. When he loses, it suddenly doesn't count. When things go right, it's discipline. When they go wrong, it's fate. That's not confidence, that's something else entirely. And this is where things really got messy. The pushback didn't just come from critics anymore. It came from his own supporters. The same people who backed him started asking serious questions. If the training was perfect, why did his stamina disappear? If discipline really controls everything, why do the same doubts keep showing up again and again? Once that armor cracked, people started looking at everything differently. Old stories got questioned, past titles got looked at again with doubt. The image didn't fall apart instantly, it started to shake, and once that doubt slips in, it spreads fast. This wasn't just one bad performance anymore. It felt like his credibility was taking a serious hit. You could even hear it in his voice after no anger, no energy, no bold talk, just pure exhaustion. This wasn't a meltdown just because he lost a fight. It hit harder than that. It felt like the persona he built for years wasn't holding up anymore. And that's the real turning point. Because this was never really about boxing. It was about identity. When your whole brand is built on always winning, losing doesn't just sting, it exposes everything. For years, Andrew Tate pushed certainty, the idea that control and effort always lead to results. But this moment broke that illusion wide open. Not just because of the loss, but because he couldn't explain it without bending his own rules. That's what made it hit different. So now the real question stands. Was this just one off night? Or was this the moment the entire persona finally started to crack? If you're paying attention, subscribe. More coming.